Yo, what's up everybody? It's Smiley here, and look, let's be real, today we're diving into a sensitive but important topic. We're talking about race in America. Now I know, it's 2023, can't we all just get along? Well, that's kind of what we're trying to figure out. The truth is there's still a lot of tension, a lot of misunderstanding, and honestly, a whole lot of baggage between different racial groups in the US, especially between Black Americans and white Americans. So, in the spirit of understanding, let's try to unpack that baggage a little. Here are 10 reasons why some white Americans may have negative perceptions of Black Americans. We're going to break down some of the historical, social, and even psychological factors at play. Buckle up, people, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Alright folks, let's start with the elephant in the room, or should I say the elephant in the history books. You can't talk about race in America without talking about slavery. It's the foundation upon which this country was built, and that's not a good thing. We're talking centuries of oppression, dehumanization, and violence against Black people. And that legacy, my friends, it doesn't just disappear overnight. It echoes through generations, shaping attitudes, beliefs, and institutions. Then came Jim Crow, segregation, lynchings, basically just new ways to maintain the old racial hierarchy. And look, even though the civil rights movement made incredible progress, it didn't magically erase centuries of trauma and inequality. We're still dealing with the consequences of that history today. It shows up in our laws, our schools, our prisons, and yes, even in our minds. Understanding this context is crucial, people, because it shapes everything that comes after. Now let's talk about the media, shall we? From news to movies to music, the media we consume plays a massive role in shaping how we see the world, including how we see each other. And let's be honest, for a long time, the media hasn't exactly painted the most flattering picture of Black Americans. We've been stereotyped, demonized, and marginalized, often reduced to caricatures that reinforce existing prejudices. Think about it. How many times have you seen Black men portrayed as criminals or thugs on TV? How often are Black women relegated to sassy sidekicks or welfare queens? These images, even when subtle, seep into our subconscious and influence our perceptions. Now, I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. There's been progress, for sure, but we still have a long way to go before we reach true representation and challenge those deeply ingrained biases. Let's talk about money, honey, or more specifically, the lack thereof. The economic disparity between Black and white Americans is staggering. We're talking about a massive wealth gap that's been fueled by centuries of systemic racism. Think about it. Black families are less likely to own homes, more likely to live in poverty, and have significantly less wealth than their white counterparts. And this isn't about personal choices, people. It's about a system rigged against Black Americans from the jump. From discriminatory housing policies like redlining to disparities in access to loans and capital, the deck has been stacked against Black communities for generations. And this economic inequality doesn't just impact individuals, it fuels resentment, mistrust, and yes, racial tension. They say education is the great equalizer, but in America, that's not always the case. The reality is the American education system is riddled with inequalities that disproportionately impact Black students. From underfunded schools in predominantly Black neighborhoods to the school-to-prison pipeline, the odds are often stacked against Black children from the start. And this lack of access to quality education has long-term consequences. It limits opportunities, perpetuates cycles of poverty, and reinforces those negative perceptions we're talking about. When you constantly hear about failing schools in Black communities, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing stereotypes, even if they're not true. Okay, let's talk about the criminal justice system, or as some might call it, the criminal justice system. Because let's be real, justice is often hard to come by, especially if you're Black in America. From racial profiling to police brutality to sentencing disparities, the system is rife with biases that disproportionately target and punish Black Americans. We've all seen the videos, heard the stories, and witnessed the injustices firsthand. And when you see this kind of systemic discrimination playing out again and again, it's easy to understand why there's so much anger, frustration, and distrust towards law enforcement in Black communities. Look, America is a melting pot, right? But sometimes those different cultures clash, and when it comes to race, cultural misunderstandings can easily morph into negative perceptions and stereotypes. Different ways of speaking, dressing, or even just expressing yourself can be misinterpreted or seen as threatening by those from a different background. It's like that awkward moment when you try to tell a joke in another language and it just falls flat. The problem is, when these cultural differences are viewed through a lens of prejudice, they can reinforce existing biases and create even deeper divides. Politics, the art of dividing people and then blaming it on the other side. And when it comes to race, well, let's just say politicians haven't exactly helped bridge the divide. From dog whistle politics to outright racist rhetoric, some politicians have exploited racial anxieties and fears for their own gain. They paint the other as the enemy, fueling division and distrust between different racial groups. And look, it's not just politicians. The media plays a role too, often framing issues in a way that reinforces existing prejudices. It's a vicious cycle, and it's one that we need to break free from if we ever want to move forward. So, we've talked about historical injustices, systemic racism, and biased media portrayals, but here's the thing, even if we fixed all of that, which is a big if, by the way, we'd still have a problem. And that problem is segregation. See, when people live, work, and socialize in separate worlds, it becomes all too easy to hold on to stereotypes and prejudices. You're less likely to know someone from a different race, which means you're more likely to rely on those preconceived notions. It's like that saying, out of sight, out of mind. But in this case, it's more like out of sight, out of understanding. And without understanding, it's pretty hard to dismantle those negative perceptions. Listen, we live in a world where misinformation spreads faster than a Kardashian wedding announcement, and when it comes to race, those false narratives and exaggerated stories can have a real-world impact. Think about it. If you constantly see stories about black-on-white crime, even if those stories are statistically inaccurate or taken out of context, it's going to shape how you view an entire group of people. Add in a healthy dose of fear-mongering, and you've got yourself a recipe for prejudice. And once those fears take root, they can be pretty damn hard to uproot. Okay, so we've covered a lot of heavy stuff, but here's the thing, at the end of the day, this isn't just about systems and institutions, it's about people, it's about acknowledging the humanity in each other, regardless of race. And that starts with dialogue, with listening to each other's experiences and challenging our own biases. It's about stepping outside of our comfort zones, having those uncomfortable conversations, and being willing to learn and grow. Because the truth is, ignorance is not bliss, it's dangerous. So let's choose to be informed, to be empathetic, and to be part of the solution. We can build a more just and equitable society, but it's going to take all of us working together. So there you have it. 10 reasons why racial tensions persist in America. It's a complex issue, rooted in centuries of injustice and fueled by a whole lot of societal baggage. But here's the good news. Understanding these reasons is the first step towards addressing and overcoming them. It's time to stop pretending that race doesn't matter, to stop shying away from those uncomfortable conversations. Let's educate ourselves, challenge our own biases, and work towards dismantling the systems that perpetuate inequality. Let's work together to build a more inclusive and understanding society. A society where everyone, regardless of their race, can feel safe, respected, and valued. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. Peace out.